Hey everybody, how's it going? What's up, guys? Hey Ten Dogs, hey Athorment, Cicero, Prototype Productions, Delantula. Nice to see you all here. I have already put up the presentation online, and y'all can see it. Hey Hando. But I want to talk through it. I want to talk through it with you guys, and I want to do this for several reasons. One, we get to go through it together. We get to explore some of these ideas together, and you guys get to iterate on it with me here on stream. Tell me what you think. Give me feedback, and you'll see me listen and react to your suggestions. But also, I wanted to do this so that we have a record for folks who want to know what's going on, what's the direction, and we can point to the stream and they will have the latest update of changes. And so I tried to be very specific with all of the really detailed things we're planning to do to the game. Hey Nexu, Caleb, and Stride. Hey, how's it going, guys? Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And Rajin's here. Awesome. He's going to be a star in an hour and a half when we talk about his CSI partnership. Hey, Architus. I hope that's how you say your name. Anyway, moving on. All of this is work in process. All of this is unfinished. All of this will change over time. And you guys all know that we want only things for the best for this game, and so if we experiment and it's just bad and it's not working, then we're gonna have to course correct, and that's why this disclaimer's here. But we want to experiment, and worst case, we try something bold and we find like a kernel of something that we learn that we then can apply. And a great example of that is Shine's experimental build, where we had all these crazy changes to Kid and Zana. No, not Kid. Kid what didn't even work. To Zana and Zurong. And there were these gems where the Zana throws, the Zoo kind of moving with her F tilt and down tilt, the Zana lariat that were really fun, that we're going to now kind of seep into the game as we have it now. And so there are always little gems, even if the whole thing isn't necessarily workable, there are always little pieces that we can take and work with. So what I want to cover today is a bunch of stuff. Talking about the game design objectives, gameplay and animation changes, character design changes, stage design changes, team assist UI and just visual changes. And this is pretty much a great summary of where we're going with everything. So let's get started. So top line goals, we want to be celebrating combos and movement. And we want to have, as a result of that, a very momentum-based game where it will snowball really quickly if someone really knows what they're doing. And air dashing is a great example of that, in a single mechanic. We want moves to be very dynamic. We want to have a lot of movement because it's just visually more exciting. It's more... there's more anticipation. It's just a better system, I think, than attacks where you're just kind of standing in one place and doing things. Wherever we can, we want to have vibrant animations and colors. I'm glad that you feel like it's very mobile, and that's the direction we want to keep pushing in. And I think the last point is we want to have a very, very complex decision tree for strategic combat, but with as few inputs as possible. So, traditional fighting games are basically, they have a very complex decision tree for strategic combat, but you know, at every point you have like 32 options, and each option is its own input. If you want to do a specific attack, you have its own input associated with it. For us, I think it's about let's have as few inputs as possible, which is a design that Smash created with their special attack and smash attack functions, which are based on like tapping a button rather than or holding a button as an alternative to just like kind of pressing it quickly. And I want to try to take that even further if we can. But with cancels, we've just opened up that decision tree significantly. And if an air dash is super powerful, goes in 8 different directions, all kinds of crazy things are happening in our game that are really exciting to try. For example, we were playing recently and someone was like, oh, if you Weishan up special, air dash down, you can chain a couple of them back and forth. And what's really interesting is, we'll have a knockback range where I might be able to chain 2 up specials together into, his up special spike. And I think that's really, really cool that something like that is now possible because of the air dashing system. And there's going to be all kinds of really cool combos that come out of having very, very emergent gameplay like that. I think that's why a game like Smash Melee has done so well over the years, because it's almost like the Minecraft of fighting games, where you really can create your own attacks and really build your own play style. It's like a sandbox in that way, and I really want to push that idea of a sandbox fighting game even further. And I think that's where combos and movement come together to help you accomplish that. Next, what does that mean for celebrating combos and movement? We also want to have a combo counter on at all times, so you've got a little like indicator on the top right corner of the screen or left corner of the screen being like, oh my gosh, you've got 11 hits in a row. And we want to have escalating sound effects as you really not rack up those combos. And we want to have a combo hit lag momentum, so that with every successive hit, you and your opponent feel that impact greater. But also, it slows down the game to the point where you can start thinking more strategically about what's the next thing you want to do. How can you deke your opponent with this air dodge? In terms of knockback calculations, we want knockbacks to be a lot more structured. So we want to have knockback bands. So instead of having percentages work like 20% and 25%, 30 and 35% all have different knockback values, we want to have everything between 30 and 40, or everything between 20 and 40 count as 20% knockback. And everything from like 40 to 100 or 40 to 80 counts as 40% knockback, and everything from 80 to 120 counts as 80% knockback. And then that way, it's a lot easier to understand what combos you can and can't do on different knockback tiers. So for example, it'll be color-coded as well. So you'll have green percent or green health bar versus orange versus blue versus yellow versus red, and you'll know that, hey, they're entering the yellow health range. I can now use this attack combo that I couldn't do when they were in green. And it basically changes the game over the stage of the game. And yeah, Thorman, I think that's a great suggestion on the combo counter changing color. Air dashes is a huge, huge, huge part of this. There's no invulnerability on it. They reset on hit. Whether you hit someone, they hit you, you now can air dash again. And I think that's really exciting. You can't air dash out of tumble, though. out of tumble. And what's interesting about that is if you don't have a double jump, you're in trouble. So one of the things I want to do here is add teching to hit stun. So like if you're in hit stun and your hit stun ends and you don't have a double jump, we can let you basically air dash without having to have a double jump. Balnisher says you can wiggle out of tumble state. Is that true? I don't know about that. Your character just like becomes falling state? I don't know. I don't think... Interesting. So, I'm happy to keep that in the game. I didn't even know about that, but we can keep that in. But if you don't want to wiggle your controller like crazy, we can also let you, basically, if you time it perfectly, when your hit stun stops and you first get control of your character, if you time an air dash in that moment, you can air dash away. And that might be a 6 to 8 frame window. So it's going to be relatively precise. And we want to have a VFX and SFX happen when the hit stun ends so that you're situationally aware of that timing. But of course, with hit lag that escalates in combos, it's not going to be very straightforward. So let's take a look at some gameplay, and I'll kind of talk about it. I'm going to move this over a little bit. If we do auras, they'll be like little flaming. So what we have here is a 3-on-3. I think that the cooldowns are still too long for this. Or too short for this, excuse me. And so it is quite a bit chaotic, and there's some stuff about visual clarification I'll be talking about later in the presentation today. I'm going to turn the volume down so you don't hear like myself over this. But I'm watching Nintendogs. I'm trying to see if there's like some cool combos that will come out here. What I like about air dashing as well is that it makes it a lot easier for power plays to kind of close in on an enemy because they've got this added movement. It's a lot harder to avoid somebody as it was before with power plays, where you could just kind of run away and it was hard for people to catch up. Now the stages are limited, are actually confined because you can very quickly cross the stage with an air dash. Yeah, it is messy, and there is some clarity we have to do with it in terms of when people have the abilities, how often the abilities can come out. There's a lot that needs to happen. I think for 3v3, we would increase cooldowns by like 50-70%. And the way that I think about it is this would not be the default mode that people would play. This would be for people who really want a 3-person strategic experience with longer cooldowns in there. They would rather have an experience with a third friend, and the possibilities that come from having 2 different types of assists and 2 different people who can power play and rotate with one another. They can play this game mode, whereas quote-unquote the default or the beginning experience will be 2-on-2, where it's much easier to collaborate. It feels like, you know, you're not sitting on the sidelines as much, and you know, you have much more of a connection to your teammate in a 2-on-2 match than you do in a 3-on-3. Let me catch up on chat here. A Thorman says, assists could have a different name color to tell the viewer they are not the point player. Yeah, I'm going to talk about that in a bit, actually. Let's see that Cicero combo here. So he up specialed, canceled into side special. And I think that's exactly what we want to do with the game, is to let really, really fun options like that happen that wouldn't normally be possible. He canceled out of up special. We actually removed special fall from the game as well. So with that, let's talk about what these changes do. So they have dramatically faster movement. It's, I think, a much more exciting game to watch. I think it's a much more exciting game to play. It also is much more airborne dependent. So strikes and tilts are less relevant, which is something I'm going to address in a second. And the other thing is that air dashes might be too strong. And we can talk about that as well. With respect to Ten Dog saying they raise the ceiling so much, I don't care about raising the ceiling. The thing that I'm happy to raise the ceiling. I want to raise the ceiling. The thing about skill gap is very different relative to skill ceiling, because it's like chess, for example. Chess has 6 pieces that you have to learn how to use. And in our game, you're going to have ground attacks, aerial attacks, and basically cancels and dodges. And so you've got one core part of the kit, which is dashing, and people have to learn how to use the dash mechanic. And I think that because the dash is an 8-way function, there's a lot. You understand that you want to air dash to get away. You can use it defensively. And I think that it's a defensive tool as much as it is an offensive tool. And I think that a lot of people will benefit from the chaos that air dashing adds at lower levels of play. Because at lower levels of play, no one knows how to use air dashes properly. And so everyone's kind of even. I need to think about articulating that a lot more straightforward and clear, but I think you guys get the point. By the way, I did a Twitter poll, and you guys asked for me to do a blog on skill gap, so I will make that this week. The time's running out, so I guess I'm going to do it tomorrow or Friday, but I'm going to make a blog post on skill gaps, and I will have that be all organized. Metaphist and others say, oh, I think we should have a limit to the number of air dashes. I don't want to have a limit to the number of air dashes. I don't want you arbitrarily to be limited by some mechanic that I just said, oh, you can only do it twice. I don't think that that's... I don't want to have a limit to the ceiling. I want you to be able to say, like, this game is freaking intense and it can be really, really deeply played. Instead... to be explored is diminishing returns on dashes. I think that once we add in the cancels, so I'm gonna add that in here. Hit stun teching. So we're gonna add in hit stun teching. We're gonna buff ground play, and if we still need it, we can put diminishing returns on dashes, where you get less and less momentum, or you get increased delay on using it. So, exactly like Kirby air jumps. And the thing that's really interesting about dash staling in terms of force is that the knockback is also working against you. So here's the other thing. Guys, with the knockback bans, once I combo you into the next knockback band, it might be too hard for certain moves to combo within air dash range. And so I don't know honestly, before I would even think about diminishing returns on dashes, I would want to integrate the knockback bands first and tune the knockback such that it has interesting kind of levels of play. What I want it to feel like is when somebody kind of knocks someone into a different knockback band, it should feel like you have to play differently. You can't use the same strategy you did to burn through their earlier knockback bands again. I don't want to have a meter. I don't want to have meters. I think that it just adds something to keep track of, and I want it to be really just kind of self-evident for people. Yeah, so we got hit stun teching, we've got knockback tuning, we've got buffing ground play, and then potentially we can add diminishing returns in some way, shape, or form to dashes if we need to. What is this? I went the wrong way. Okay, so I also said buffing ground play. So we're going to be letting cancels out of tilts and strikes. And we're consolidating tilts and strikes into one attack. And I'll talk about this. So we're going to have basically ground attacks, combined tilts and strikes. When you're in the air, you don't have strike attacks. And when you're on the ground, you're not going to have strike attacks too. But every attack will be chargeable and be cancelable. Every attack will basically have the base stats of a tilt with a very fast startup, very low knockback, low damage. And as you charge it, it's going to escalate the damage and knockback during charging to catch up to that lower base. So in theory, if I have a tilt and I charge it fully charged, it will be essentially the same as a fully charged strike right now. But it's starting from a lower base, so the acceleration in the charging is a lot stronger than it is on charging today. And then this is something that I have experimental, and I should really kind of flag it here as very experimental. I don't know if we'll be able to do it, but we also want moves to evolve during a charge. So maybe it's the tilt form versus the charged form is literally a completely different move, or the charged form at a certain point gets a buff to it with extra properties. And so I'll talk about what this looks like in a second. First, from a game development perspective, what I like about this is that it's quality over quantity. We won't have like filler attacks. We'll be able to concentrate our animation and VFX onto fewer abilities. And we can have a higher degree of personality and flair for characters. So let me talk about Wei Shan as an example. And I will stress that, I'm going to go back to this slide. This will change over time. I'm going to put this again specifically before this next section because this is purely illustrative, and I want to use this as an example of what's possible with this, where even though we're quote-unquote simplifying the game, we're canceling that out with charges, cancel charges on ground attacks, and we're also canceling it out by letting the tilts basically still function as chargeable attacks, and we're mitigating it further by letting the attacks change, form or evolve as they get as they attack. So here's Wei Shan. So F is forward attack. It's his F strike. He's leaping up. He's swiping his Guandao over his head and in front of him, and he'll do that very quickly if you just do the tilt attack. And if it's charged, he'll have evolved knockback and damage. And an evolution of this move could be, his Guandao catches the enemy and then drags the enemy forward and slams them into the ground. So it would be a very different move where, his F strike normally is like a killing blow, but if you, or it can be a killing move, but if you charge it past a certain point, it might actually just be a combo starter for the final move, where it's like the perfect alley-oop for you to jump and forward air and kill them. His up attack, he would swing his Guandao from behind him over his head. That would be like his up tilt today. The charge attacks would evolve the knockback and damage. And an evolution of this might be that he gets infused with like dragon energy. So if he hits you, he will instantly like rise up with like green energy and use that. So Crab says, I missed the beginning of the stream where we talked about normal to special cancels. So what I've actually said is everything cancels into everything. So you can cancel grounded specials, grounded normals, anything. You can cancel anything and anything with air dashes, though, or wave dashes. And of course, you can wave dash in place to effectively just get a 10 frame cancel into whatever you were going to do. So that's like the up attack. The down attack, where he reaches forward and stabs in front of him. The charge attacks can evolve the knockback, range, and damage. So, it already has like a bit of an evolution where we can have like fire come off of it and like extend the range a little bit further, kind of like the Ashani neutral special, which had that little sparks that come off the end of it. We can do that. But we also could do something where, like, hey, if he charges and he hits them, then he'll, like, when he pulls it back, he'll, like, lunge forward a little bit, and he can actually follow up on the attack. There are not jump cancels out of normals, but there are dash cancels, which are basically the same thing. You can dash up 90 degrees, 45 degrees in either direction, wave dash left or right, or dash in place, and just do a second attack on the spot. Jab. So jab wouldn't be an actual physical jab with his hands, but he'd basically do his down strike, and he could like basically pound the ground repeatedly like a jab, where there's kind of that timing, shield pressure angle to it. If he charges it, it evolves the range, kind of closer to what it is now. And potentially an evolution would have like multiple dragon spikes appear from the ground to just like exaggerate the VFX. And that's kind of like, again, in theory, what we can do here is we can concentrate our animation effort, our VFX effort into one set of moves, have a higher degree of personality on it. So it's like, okay, like, Wei Shan, he stabs people, but his F strike can like also catch people and throw people. He has dragon energy that's affiliated with his, up attack. You've got dragon energy that comes from his like jab. If he charges it up, it shoots the dragon spikes out like his neutral special. And so there are ways that we can really help the character shine in their unique way through these mechanics. So what we benefit from this, dash attacks are still in the game right now. I don't think we have any plans to get rid of them. They're accessible via the strike button, but part of the goal for this is to remove the strike button. That's kind of the whole point of this, is I want to remove the strike button. So we literally only have attacks and specials, and that's it. And so in that world, maybe we lose dash attacks as a result of that. I hadn't actually thought about that, but that's a good point, Krabs. I think that in this world we do lose dash attacks, and instead you do all of these attacks out of running. So when you're running, you can cancel into these. And I think that that's also important where... you can, gosh, what am I trying to say here? It's important to let running cancel into tilts and these attacks, particularly because of how fast your opponents are moving. Valnashir says, I still say make attacks that you can cancel out of dashes slide you if you don't have dash attacks. So, if you attack out of a dash, your distance that you're going is fixed. Charged aerials. Yeah, Valnashir, yeah, you'll slowly stop rather than stop instantly, yes. In terms of charged aerials, I think that they're really interesting, particularly because we have, charged ground attacks. However, I think that it's not necessary, frankly, because aerials are already very strong. They already serve a purpose, and we don't need to. I think that adding that in, I think that there's a lot of fun that will come from charged aerials. If I air dash at an awkwardly upward trajectory and I start charging it all the way up there, and then as I come down, I unleash it, I think that'd be really fun for people. But I think that that's something that we would explore on like a case by case, where certain characters have specific moves that they can charge, whereas not every move will be chargeable, but maybe certain aerial moves are chargeable. Next, blocks with movement counterplay. So instead of shielding, you're now blocking or protecting. Everything is blocked based on whether or not you're facing the attacker or the projectile. So here's a clip of that in action. Animation's obviously super temporary, but right here, Zana could not be attacked from the front, but could be attacked from behind. So again, very movement-oriented gameplay. We want movement to be counterplay to shields. Shields blocks won't have health. Now, couple things. You've got much weaker defense, especially from behind. You're unprepared for high movement of aerial attacks. In a power play situation, you can't shield. You also don't have rolls anymore. So, it's a very, very weak defense. And so we need to buff it. And so the next step here is out of protect options. So when you're in protect, dashing forward and backward right now just gives you a wave dash. Blocking stops aerial attacks, yes, as long as they're in front of you. So what we want to do is give you out of protect options. Options. So a dash forward would be like a charge. So you charge forward with your shield, and you're knocking back an enemy if they're hit. Of course, if you don't hit them, you've just made yourself even more vulnerable to a cross-up, because now you're going potentially past them, and they can follow up and back air you or any number of things. Dashing backwards would be a retreat. So you hop backwards, and you gain an extra boost if you get hit during that retreat. And what I'd like to do is a mid-dash backward option where you can pivot, and I'm mid-retreating, and then I can turn around and basically charge behind me. So if that's how... and that would be basically a really great way to turn around, frankly. and cover someone behind you. So someone's coming behind you, you can retreat and then turn your shield around. You carry all of your momentum forward, and you like flip directions that way. And we can do that. Next is you want to mix up attack moves. So we want characters to have options for which moves they bring, not just a gust shield. Maybe something that we do is a back shield, right? So like we could even have like a back shield be an option where like, okay, no matter if they're in the air, no matter if they're on the ground, no matter what, I can give them a back shield and they will not be able to be hit from behind for like 5 seconds. And we want to have, again, options like this that just add variety or alternatives to gusting. I think the assist moves will also need to be touched up during the... yes, so double tap backwards to turn around while shielding, basically. And then... assist moves are going to need to be touched up to basically adjust for all of the combat changes we've done in terms of air dashing and ground canceling and things like that. Basically, we're going to have to increase the speed at which these attacks come out pretty significantly. We don't have a shield break. Crabs. So, like, this is something we'll experiment with. Right now, if you want to go back, if you want to turn around, you could, like, cancel, drop your shield, turn around. But, yeah. Greg has a great thing about controls. Absolutely. We've got a little bit of, like, limitations to the control thing that we just need to put on the back burner. Let's focus on the core features first, and then we'll get the controls to be what they need to be. But we do want to get there, where one set of controls can do everything. If we can remove the strike button, that now allows us to do that, right? Where we remove strikes, we can now add the solo assist button there, right? If you wanted to. So, yeah. We also have a Wavedash button. At this point, the Wavedash button's kind of redundant, so we can remove the Wavedash button. And then at that point, we basically have room for everything to go on your controller. I mean, already as is, if we can remove strike and we can remove Wavedash, the Wavedash button. In terms of character design, I want to kind of be light on this, but, you know, this is an update on Ashani. Where we're going. You can see like the literal side-by-side here of where she was and where she's going. I think she's got a much better shape to her. Her hair looks great. Her glasses need to come over. The yellow and other color needs to come through here. This is a work in process, but we're getting closer to this, and I'm really excited about that. In terms of lighting, right now, you got the shininess of the characters. You know, you got like these little shiny elements on the shoulder pads and elbows and such that in like Overwatch and Icons have. And we're gonna be more of like a hand-painted lighting where it's closer to like Battle Right. Will there be moves that go through blocks? Absolutely. Like, if you've got a Ganondorf punch in our game, that would 100% break shields. Like, be a block break. So you couldn't block it. In terms of stage design, I don't know what the theme of Vortex is going to be. Like, we're still kind of figuring that out, frankly. But all of the stages, we'll get there. we want them to be a 2D background. So here's what it is closer up, what it looks like. So it's a 2D background. You can see on the fringes, there's some gray. That is supposed to be like the inside of the tower. There are ways that we can kind of play with that more over time where we're like, hey, this actually isn't in reality or whatever. It's like inside the tower that you're climbing. And I'm really excited about that. We can have kind of seasons for the stages where the leaves are fall season or it's snowing. And it's easier to change it. I think the animation will be nice and easy for this, relatively speaking. It's beautiful, it's stylized, and it's clear. So I'm really excited about those changes coming through. Team Assist UI. We want this to be kind of going from this to something like this, where it's much more like clear that this is an assist game. You've got teammates who you're playing with. We need to make those abilities more clear. If you've got assists, we can have them down here. The combo counter can be here. Maybe we can have a cooldown queue for your teammates so you know when they're coming up if you don't want to just like look up here. The round you're on and your gauntlet, the color-coded health, the lives of you and your teammates. We want to switch to a UI like this. Visual clarity. Otherwise, we've got team colors and outlines, name tag clarity. For example, gold is you in League of Legends. Maybe we have allied assists. Allied assists only have name tags and enemy assists do not. Maybe power plays have name tags. We have to figure out who gets what. Here's an example of team outlines. This is currently live on the experimental branch. There are some issues with it. I think if you've got lower graphic settings, it'll instantly crash for some reason. I'm not 100% sure about this. We were kind of experimenting at like 4 a.m., so I don't really know if it works or not. But we've got colored outlines. In terms of assist clarity, we can give assists very, very exaggerated highlights. Look right here, like what these look like. It's almost like lighter melee or whatever, where we can have assists come out and they can be these super bright kind of beings. So you know that that's not a character. And then for the assists themselves, we can have a little indicator come out that shows off hey, there's an ability that's spawning now. So it appears, it summons the assist, and then the assist kind of attacks. Yeah. So with that, that is the presentation, guys. Love to get your thoughts. I'll kind of throw this back to the Ashani because I really like her. Or actually, I'll go back to the homepage. You can see, hey, look, we've already got the color highlighting here, and the combo trails and such. Like, a lot of this was inspiring, the direction that we're in now. So I'm really glad that we had this concept art. Put Ashani back. Delantula says, I think it mostly seems like great ideas. A lot of things to differentiate this game from other platform fighters. Supers. I don't know. Maybe we'll get there. Can there be highlight on her hair? Could be. Chungo says, I'm a tad concerned with how Protect works, given how aerial-centric shield pressure is in other platform fighters. What's the line of thinking there? I really think my biggest fear with the original announcement was that this game was just going to be Icons 2.0 again, but it really seems to be aiming something totally itself, which is great. Oh, that's a different person, sorry. Chungo says, what's the line of thinking on Protect? And Marcos has a similar question. How does block pressure work? How is it different from shield pressure? Block pressure... Well, there'll still be kind of shield stun for both parties. We're also going to have chip damage, like in a fighting game. So every time you get hit with a shielded attack, you're still going to take damage from it. And the way that we're building the knockback system into bands is by health bars. And so at some point, you can literally whittle someone's health down, and they don't want to just give you free damage. So I think that's how block pressure is going to work. Where you don't want to sit there blocking. Chungo said, what's the line of thinking on Protect? And again, aerial-centric shield pressure is. So blocking, again, we want it to be facing so that there's cross-ups, so that... And then he says going through spam would be as easy as shield dashing forward. Essentially, if someone's just throwing out hitboxes right in front of you, yeah, you can basically shield dash forward, and if you catch them in your charge, you'll knock them back and do a little bit of damage to them. Yeah, so like, and then if someone's attacking you and you anticipate an attack and you want to retreat, you can also retreat, and if they hit you, you get pushed back a little bit further back. And you can also use that as a way to change the way your shield is going by turning around, by dashing back twice, basically. And you'll flip around and then do a charge the other way. Can you block in the air? No. Cannot block in the air. You can air dash away, which is a very, very strong defensive option. What would a one-frame parry look like, Metafist? We intentionally don't want to have iframes on dash attacks, and I feel like a frame parry would be even worse. Hitting a target pushes them back slightly. Krabs, that's an amazing suggestion. It might be a better option than what we have. Shield bashing. Shield tilting. Well, honestly, I really like these ideas together. Like, shield in A is a shield bash. Basically, it's like Gust. And then if you tilt it up, you can block from above. If you tilt it to the right, you can tilt to the right. I like that. I like that. What we'd have to make clear is that if you're blocking up, you're not blocking in front of you and you're not blocking behind you. So what we could do is like, maybe we can give you 8 degrees of aiming your shield. Or like 45 degrees. I would do keyboard 8 degrees, and then if you're angled at 45, anyone who's down tilting can hit you. That works. We could do that. I don't know though, because what I don't like about it is that it changes the way you're facing. And I think that making shielding that complex has problems, but I think that what we can do is give an oop left, right, and up. And so if you do an oop up, then it basically you take your shield and just like jump up with it, and you'll basically do a charge, but like upwards a little bit and knock people back that way. Yeah, we can have a universal anti-air. Because, like, again, remember, we're trying to celebrate movement. And if we just let people, like, tilt the shield, that's not really movement. I'd rather have it if you up, you anti-air up. Basically, if you go forward, you charge, you back, you protect, you retreat, and can turn around, charge if you want. Cool. This is awesome, guys. I'm going to add that as an oop option. Dash up. Charge upward. Universal anti-air. I think shield grabbing or block grabbing is still fine, but I think charging left and right makes more sense to me. If you charge with the movement stick than you do with pushing A. But, you know, I'm sure we can make it customizable so you can do it however you want. And that's push block is basically what charges, right? So anyway. Crab says, I'd honestly prefer this to shield grab since I think grab should be balanced as an offensive option rather than a defensive one. I don't think so. I think that Grabs counter charges. So if someone's charging towards me, I can grab them out of it. Yeah, I think that GameCube controllers would work with this totally fine. I don't see any reason why they wouldn't. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up, and really appreciate you all watching this, contributing to the conversation. I think you made some great contributions, asked some great questions, and I will be doing a stream in 30 minutes publicly talking about the community support initiatives for Icon's Legacy Edition. So I hope you tune into that. The link I'll put into Discord right now. I'm going to grab it from here. And I'll throw it in Discord announcements. But yeah, I will see you guys on that. I need a little bit of time to prepare. I've started eating, as you can see. Sorry for being rude, guys. Yeah. I love you guys. Thank you for all of the tips and feedback and everything. So I'll talk to you all soon. See ya.